Hey guys, welcome to the Brown Paper Theology Podcast. I'm Will Wolf, and on this podcast, you'll find various teachings ranging from topical word studies to a big series on the story of the Bible. The mission of this podcast is to help inspire people to get into the foundational texts of our faith and really experience them and hear what God is saying through them. We call it the Word for a reason, and that's because it's a word worth listening to. So thanks for listening in, and I hope you enjoy and learn something while you're here. All right, guys, this week we are going to study the story of two brothers, Cain and Abel. Now, this story is tragic, but it is super important to internalize as we go on to the rest of the biblical story. Just as a few points of correction going in, I mispronounced Eden earlier in the episode. I pronounced the Hebrew like Eden, and that's just wrong. It should be Aden. That's just a little correction there. Secondly, I want to draw everyone's attention to the consequence versus punishment discussion from the previous episode, which is on Genesis chapters 2 and 3. I used the term punishment in this episode to describe what happens to Cain after his failure, but I really should have used the term consequence instead. I think we are supposed to view Cain's fate as the natural outcome of his actions rather than some sort of punishment. It's parallel to God's lament at the end of chapter 3, and there God's kind of detailing the consequence of the human's failure in the garden, and so it's kind of the same thing here. I'm still on the journey of reshaping my thoughts to understand the difference between consequence and punishment, and so that old way of thinking kind of still slips out occasionally, so forgive me for that. And as a last point, this class was recorded at home. It was just me and my wife, and so it was super chill, and so you might be able to pick up on that. I just might feel a little bit more relaxed, but hopefully you enjoy that. All right, so with that out of the way, please enjoy the episode. Class, welcome. We're going to continue on our journey through Genesis. As I've said about a trillion times before, Genesis 1 through 11 is going to take us a little while. It's going to be a little bit of a slog to get through, but it's a helpful slog because if we really internalize these first 11 chapters of the Bible, I feel like it's really going to make an impact as we just move on further into the story. And so, as is my tendency, I have a tendency to just want to blast forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little step back, and we're going to take a breath. We're going to open up with a word of prayer, and then we're going to continue on. So Lord Jesus, we just thank you so much for this day. Again, Lord, thank you for the opportunity to teach this class. It's such a gift because every time that I teach it, I remind myself, I read again, and I see just how good you are, and I see how much I want to learn about your word, how much I still have yet to learn, God. It is delightful. It's delightful to know. It's delightful that you want to be known and that you've given us this gift of your word. And so as we go into it tonight, God, I pray that we would just know that you're here with us, that you're cheering us on as we learn more and more about you. And I pray that we would really internalize the meaning of these texts and not just internalize them into our heads, but allow them to move from our heads and into our hearts and really just change us and shape us. We just thank you again so much, Lord. I pray you'd bless all the ears who will hear this. And we just thank you so much. We praise you. We just ask this in your holy and precious name. Amen. All right, so tonight we are going to be looking at Genesis chapters 4 through 5. Now this is these are like the Cain and Abel chapters. That's a pretty important story, and it's probably a story that we've heard about a trillion times, but I just want to take a chance to go through it slowly, to really see all the steps that are happening, because it's taking the themes that we've looked at for the first 3 chapters, really chapters 2 and 3, and we're going to see them kind of repeat themselves. And so just as a quick review, we've seen Genesis 1. It opened up with this beautiful picture, God's plan to totally unite heaven and earth into one, and he invites humanity in on that project with him. That's his intention for humanity, for humans to multiply and to spread along the land, but to also embody his rule upon the land as they subdue chaos. And then we see, okay, how does that, so if Genesis chapter 1 gives us the picture of that, Genesis 2 is like, okay, and let's see how that went. And so Genesis 2 opens up with the God forming the human out of the dust of the earth, with mixing with water, and we talked about how spirit and water are paralleled there. And so he takes that nefesh chaya, that clay mud man filled with divine breath, and he rests him in this garden that he planted. And this human is supposed to work it and keep it, to cultivate it and to protect it, just like the priestly class, the Levites are supposed to do later on with the tabernacle and the temple. And so we're supposed to see the first humans in the story, Adam and Eve, as these priests, as God's delegated people to just cultivate this garden. And he tells them, just, hey man, have an absolute blast. Eat from every tree that you see. Just please, for goodness sake, don't eat from this one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or of Tov and Ra. And it's a great setup. It seems like it's going to be the best thing in the whole wide world. This is what God intends for his people, and it's an awesome setup. But unfortunately, we see in Genesis 3, it opens up with the humans listening to a voice that was not God. They listened to that serpentine, snaky creature, the creature that takes God's good command and twists it to where he causes the humans to focus on the negative and think, oh, maybe God's holding out on me. Maybe God's holding out something that I need, that I want. And so the humans take it into their own hands to redefine good on their own terms. And they see the tree that it's good, and they take it for themselves and they eat it. And because of that, God's super saddened. And he says, man, because you guys made this mistake, there's going to be all these consequences. Relational unity is going to be broken. It's going to be really difficult to bring about life from the womb and from the ground. And you guys aren't going to be in the garden anymore. And so the humans are cast out of the garden, and they're left in the land of Eden. They're not totally cast out of the land of delight. That's what Eden means. Eden means delight, but they are cast out of the garden. And so where we find ourselves is this family. They're outside the garden now, and God puts a cherubim, this divine, heavenly, crazy animal creature, and a flaming sword to guard the way back into the garden. All right, so we're going to find ourselves picking up at Genesis chapter 4 today. And so the humans, they've been cast out of the garden, and yes, that's where we find ourselves. And this is how chapter 4 opens up. So now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten or made a man with Yahweh. Now, usually our English translations, they supply this thing where it says, I have gotten a man, I've made a man with the help of Yahweh. But that bit, the help of Yahweh, isn't actually there in the Hebrew. It just says, I have gotten a man with Yahweh. And that could be taken a couple different ways, but it seems most likely, and we're going to see later on as this chapter closes, that this is almost Eve's, this is like a boastful thing. She's saying like, oh, Yahweh made a man, and hey, I've also made a man. And so it's like Eve, what are you doing? You're like putting yourself on equal footing with God, and that's a weird attitude, and we see that attitude shift at the end of this story. But remember, these humans they were called to do something, but everything's kind of messed up. Like the relationships are all over the place, and it's indicating here that Eve now is kind of putting herself on equal footing with Yahweh. She's kind of boasting. But then it says, and again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. Okay, so Abel was a shepherd, and Cain was a farmer. All right, so Cain's the firstborn, Abel's the secondborn. So second. All right, so just keep in mind that they were Cain was a farmer and Abel was a shepherd. So in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering from the fruit of the ground. Remember, he's a farmer, and so he's taking some of his crop and he's offering it to Yahweh. And then it says, and Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. Okay. And Yahweh had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Okay, so we have these two brothers. They're outside. I'm just going to redraw this here. We're in the land of Eden right now, but we're not in the garden. We're outside the garden. So we have Adam, Eve, and then we have these two boys. And these two boys are both offering sacrifices. And both of them, if we look on into the Torah, into Leviticus, they're both legitimate sacrifices. It's not that they didn't make proper sacrifices. Like, as we're going to see, God has favor for Abel's, but that doesn't mean that Cain's wasn't a proper sacrifice. A grain offering, or what Cain brings, vegetable offering, like that's a very legitimate thing. It wasn't like he just made the wrong sacrifice, but it's the kind of sacrifice that they made. So it says, in the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. There's no specified like, hey, this is the first fruits, this is the best of the best. No, it just says of the fruit of the ground, just some plants, or maybe some grain and some vegetables. It's just an offering. But Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fatty portions, that good fatty portions. And when we get to Leviticus, we see this huge emphasis on like the fatty portions. And the fatty portions of meat is usually the tastiest. It's like the choicest part. And so Abel is bringing like the best of the best to Yahweh. He's bringing his firstborn, the firstborn of the flock, and the fatty portions. And so even though their sacrifices are both legitimate, Abel's is looked upon with favor because it can be understood that this is like Abel's offering everything to Yahweh. So Cain made a grain offering, and Abel made like an animal offering, meat. So, very understandably, the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Or the Lord accepted Abel and his offering, but did not accept Cain's offering. Now, there's a difference between acceptance and, there's a difference between not accepting something and outright rejecting it. It doesn't say that God rejected Cain's offering and Cain itself. It just said he didn't like look upon it with favor. He looked upon Abel's with favor. That doesn't mean he had like scorn for for Cain's offering. No, he just didn't look at it with the same regard. And like Cain gets really ticked off about this. He doesn't understand. It says, so Cain was very angry and his face fell. Now, if Yahweh had just straight up rejected Cain, I don't think he would carry on like this. Like after Cain makes his sacrifice, Yahweh doesn't just like keep him at arm's length or like go away from him. No, he enters this dialogue with him. He says this, the Lord says to Cain, he said, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? Won't there be exaltation for you? And so he's not saying, hey, Cain, there's a step that Abel has gotten to where he's willing to offer me the firstborn of his flock, the best of the best, that you're not quite there yet. But like you can get there. Absolutely. If you do well, there's going to be exaltation for you too. So just continue on this journey. I'm entering, like I'm here for you. Obviously, I'm having this conversation. I know there's something in you that needs to kind of like be developed, be changed. And so I'm not going to reject you. You're just not quite to the point there yet.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If he was a farmer, though, he couldn't, like, did he have animals? Like, I know, like, Abel was a shepherd, technically, so he could bring an animal. But since Cain technically was just like a farmer,
Right.
could he even bring anything that would have been up to the standard that Abel had?
Yeah, so
Like, what would be considered that if it's just fruits and vegetables?
that's a good question. So the question was whether or not, or how Cain would get to the same level as Abel. Like, what's the equivalent? Because Cain is a farmer; he's not a shepherd, so it's not like he has animals to sacrifice himself. So the equivalent would be of the first fruits, like the first bit of the harvest, taking it to Yahweh. But it just says an offering of the fruit of the ground. There's no there's no indicator of like this could have just been the leftovers, the scraps, or whatever. But the fact that Abel sacrifices the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions, it's the best of the best. But it is important to see Cain as bringing an offering. So like Cain as the firstborn would kind of be carrying on like the legacy. He'd be like the what he's doing in offering a sacrifice would be like the firstborn's thing to do. And so Abel's also bringing a sacrifice, and then the secondborn is looked upon with favor, and that's super subversive. That's just kind of how Yahweh tends to go. Like looking upon David, the runt of the litter, as like, that's the king I want, the youngest dude, not the super tall and handsome one. No, I want this little shepherd boy. And that's just the way God works. He's always championing the underdog. And farmers were usually associated with agriculture, with cities, and with power. But shepherds were in the wilderness. They were away from the city, away from all that stuff. And so God continually, just like he loves to just lavish, he loves to just choose the shepherds, the people that are in the wilderness, and not go with the farmers, with the city boys. And so we see a city boy and a country boy. And the country boy brings the first fruit. It's the best of the best. He just happens to be the younger brother, which is subversive. And then Cain, remember, he's still bringing a sacrifice. He's doing something that's good. He's still offering something. But God sees within him. He says, man, there's just something that needs to develop. But he's dedicated to developing that in Cain, because he comes to him. He wouldn't have come to him if he was like, nope, I'm done with Cain. Straight up, no, just get away from me. He comes to him and says, dude, why are you angry? Why is your face falling? If you do well, won't there be exaltation for you too? But then he says, if you do not do well, remember Cain, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. And so we get a little bit of extra information as to where the sacrifice is happening. And remember, they have been cast out of the garden itself. And there's this mention of a door. And so it seems like they're offering the sacrifice at the door to get back into the garden. Exactly. It's exactly like the tabernacle. And so the tabernacle has this sort of structure where we have the tabernacle itself, the tent, which has the holy, and then the Holy of Holies.
Which you could only get when you had offerings.
Yep. So the Holy of Holies, the very center of the tent, or the center of the compound, you could only one person, one time a year, could go there under extremely exceptional circumstances. So that was the high priest that could get to the Holy of Holies. Priests could get to the holy place. So when you make your offering, you really are making your offering at the door of the tabernacle. The altar was out there, and then the blood of the animal is like the representative life can go in. And so we're supposed to kind of be thinking that way when we see Cain and Abel here. They're at the door. It's like, can they get back in? How are they going to get back in? But there's also something there at the door with them. And God says sin is crouching at the door. So crouching is like this animalistic thing. And so sin now has taken on this beastly nature. And we're supposed to think back, was there any sort of beastly thing in the previous chapters that we should be thinking about as well? Oh yeah, it was that serpenty character. The serpenty thing. It's like the serpent has gone out of the garden with them, and it's right there again. And so sin is crouching at the door. It has this animalistic hunger for Cain. It wants to pounce on him and take him. But God says you must rule over it, or you can rule over it, Cain. You can rule over this. This does not have to overtake you. You can rule it, Cain, and you have to rule it. You must rule it. Because remember, the human vocation that God gives, the human purpose that we have is not to allow chaos to win or to overtake us. It's to push chaos back. It's to push chaos back. Now, what's important is that we need, so we talked about it before, in order to rule, we need wisdom. We need wisdom that's usually given in the form of a command. And so God here telling Cain that he can rule it, it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, okay, I can rule it. I actually do have authority over this thing. I don't have to allow it to devour me. And as we see here, it says its desire is for you, but you must rule over it. So that word desire, it's the same word that's used back before in chapter 3 when he tells the woman, your desire shall be for your husband, but he shall rule over you. And so we're supposed to see desire now. It's not this positive thing. Sin crouching at a door like an animal waiting to pounce on us so that it can like rule us. That's not a very positive image. It's not a positive thing. And so Cain is looking at this, or he's having this internal battle with himself. He's super jealous. He's ticked off at his brother. It's like, God, why aren't you accepting me? I made a sacrifice for you and you picked my younger brother? Come on, dude. I'm ticked. I'm pissed. I'm jealous. But God says, look, dude, like I haven't rejected you. There's just something inside you that needs to change. And so I'm committed to cultivating this. But if you allow this tendency within you, this jealous rage at your brother to consume you, man, that's not good. It's not good because this is like an animal that wants you. And so we see sin, it says sin takes on this like animalistic thing. So sin is like an animal.
It's kind of like a venom symbiote.
That's true.
It'll find certain ones that it wants to cling to.
Yeah, it's like a venom symbiote, exactly. And like the symbiote, it will probably destroy you. Actually, it will destroy you if you allow it, because it's going to get stuck to you and start to suck the life out of you. And so we're going to see how Cain responds to this. We're going to see if he rules over it or if he allows it to devour him, to pounce upon him. Okay, so we pick up in verse 8. So Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. He killed him. He murdered his brother. It's the first murder that we have in the Bible. And so they're out together. They're in the field. And he rises up against his younger brother and he just kills him, dashes him to pieces. And so he allows this sin animal to rule over him, just like his parents did in the garden. And so we're supposed to look at this and see, okay, what's being said here? So in the garden, we had this sort of general image of seeing good and taking for ourselves. And we're not in the garden right now. We're not in the garden right now, but that doesn't mean that the choice at the tree isn't constantly happening. And so this is Cain's moment at the tree. But instead of taking the fruit, like seeing what's good in his eyes in the form of something to eat, what he sees as good in his eyes is, man, my brother just shouldn't exist anymore. I'm so jealous. If he just didn't exist, there would be no issue because I wouldn't have any competition. And so he sees it's good that his brother should be gone. And instead of taking a fruit, he takes the life of his brother. He strikes him. And what's interesting is that God does the exact same thing he did with Adam and Eve in the garden. Remember, after they took the fruit, God gives them all these chances. He says, hey man, where are you? And then he says, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And then he asks the woman, what is this you have done? And so he asks all these questions as like an invitation to repent an invitation of repentance. And we see God do the exact same thing here with Cain. And so we see Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Excuse me. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Hey, Cain, where's Abel, your brother, man? Where is he?" And Cain said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And like we in the West, in the United States of America, would be like, "Yeah, man, no, my brother's not that's his problem. My brother's his own problem." But the biblical authors want us to say, yes, Cain, you are your brother's keeper. Absolutely. You are responsible for the people around you. And so to this answer, the Lord said, "What have you done? What is this you have done?" The same thing he asked the woman. "What is this you have done?" He's now asking their son, "What is this you have done?" It means that Cain, even though it looks different, it's a different manifestation, he'd made the exact same mistake at its core that his parents made. He saw what was good in his own eyes, and he took. And so Cain's choice is met with the same word, with the same question. What is this you have done? And usually as we go on to the story, when somebody asks that, it means that there was just an at the tree moment. And so we're going to see that later on as we go. I don't want to spoil anything, but we will see that come up. So just store that back in your brain, is that when someone asks, "What is this you have done?" it means there was probably just an at the tree moment that somebody failed. And so Cain has failed here. He says, "What is this you have done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." And Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Then Yahweh said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And Yahweh put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Okay, so Cain takes the life of his brother. God comes to him, and he says, "Dude, you have, remember, as he said to Adam, he said, 'From dust you're taken, and to dust you'll return.'" And so like the proper quote unquote way to die is like of old age, and then you turn back to dust. But what Cain has done is he's murdered his brother, and now his blood has soaked into the ground. And because of that, every time that Cain tries to work the ground, it's like a reminder of what he did. And so the ground will no longer yield its strength to him because he soaked it with his brother's blood. And God heard the cries of that blood as it was soaking into the ground. And God always hears the cries of his people. He hears the cries of his people in slavery in Egypt and in exile, and he's constantly listening for the sound of his people, and he always responds, he always answers. And so to Cain, he says, "Man, just like he did to the first humans in the garden, he says, Cain, there's consequence, man. You just did this. There's going to be consequences." And so the ground's not going to yield its strength, and you're going to be a fugitive. You're going to never have rest, basically. But Cain says, "Dude, that's so much. That's more than I can bear. That's more than I can bear. And whoever finds me is going to kill me." But God says, no. I'm going to put a mark on you, so that if someone does kill you, I'm going to avenge you sevenfold. And it doesn't mean that if somebody kills Cain, God's going to kill that person 7 times. That doesn't make any sense. It's just whatever the God is going to punish adequately or appropriately. And so this is an image of a severe mercy. And so there is a punishment, but there's also a merciful sentence with it, that Cain is cast out, but God is going to protect him. And so if somebody, God has the ultimate say, the ultimate authority over Cain's life. No one else does. Nobody can take it but God's. And God's choosing now to not even take his life. And so he puts this mark on Cain as this sign of his mercy, that speaking as God, that God has the ultimate authority and the ultimate say over Cain's fate. Nobody else does. But there's also this punishment aspect of Cain, this is going to happen now. You're going to be, the ground is not going to yield its strength from you, and you're going to be a fugitive. And then it says, then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Okay, so his parents, we got to bring our rectangles back. Actually, I can just scroll up. So his parents went east of the garden. And then Cain goes east of Eden entirely. And so he's out of the land of delight. He's like in the wilderness land. And then it said, Cain knew his wife. Who is that? That's a big old rabbit hole. But he knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And when Cain built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Okay, so that's a little interesting. So God just promised that he is going to protect Cain. He's putting a sign to protect Cain that hey man, you made this terrible mistake, but I'm showing mercy to you and I've got you. I'm going to provide protection for you. But what Cain does is he leaves and then he builds himself a city. And so when we think city, we think of like skyscrapers, massive buildings. We think of whatever, Richmond, New York, Los Angeles, something like that. Massive buildings like this. So that's not what city means in the Bible. A city is just a walled enclosure. But the emphasis is these walls. That's what makes it a city. Now, what are walls for? Walls are for protecting yourself. And so God just promised that he was going to protect Cain, but Cain obviously doesn't take him for his word, and he goes out and builds himself protection. So Cain builds a city.
Does he ever die?
Cain does die. Yes.
There's like a part that I'm looking ahead and I'm like, I don't see it, but it'll probably come up.
Yeah. Yeah. So Cain. Yeah. So we'll get there. So Cain builds a city, and so this is when we have to look back at what God does for the human, the lone human in the garden. And I think I mentioned it when we were there. It's weird because God takes the side of the human, and side, tsela, is an architectural term. And then it says he builds the woman. And so God builds an Azer for the man. And so God is the one who's building the delivering ally. But then here we see Cain go out and build like his own sort of delivering ally, his own source of protection in the form of this city. And the words in Hebrew for city and Azer, Azer is the word that is used in Genesis 2 to describe the delivering ally that God builds for the man. Cain, the word for city, is gir. And it's one letter different. And so we're supposed to see this as like parallel, like, okay. God's the one who builds delivering allies. That's what God does. That's what God does for people. But Cain has taken it upon himself to build his own delivering ally in the form of this city. And so cities in the Bible after that don't have a very good connotation, because cities are what's built when people like don't trust God. They like take it upon themselves to do this thing. It's just bad. So Cain is providing for himself this own thing, and we're going to see this city. It's a twofold thing. Within this city, there's a lot of growth for the human race in terms of like technology and stuff, but there's also a lot of violence that grows there. And so there's the bittersweet nature, the duality nature, or the dual nature of cities. All right, so in this city, we're gonna continue on. So chapter 4, verse we'll go to verse 18. So Cain had Cain and his wife. They conceived. Well, she conceived and bore Enoch, and he called the name of this city Enoch. All right, in the city of Enoch, to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech, and Lamech took 2 wives. That's not good. The name of the one was Ada, bless you, and the name of the other Zillah. So Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain, and he was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. And the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Okay, so we have these 3 sons. So in the city of Enoch, or the city of Cain, we have this line. We have Lamech, who takes 2 wives. That's a little weird. We're gonna come back to that. But for now, let's focus on Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal-Cain. Great names. Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal-Cain. And let's look at what these guys are kind of responsible for. So Jabal is the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. And so he takes shepherding, like animal husbandry, to the max. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Who came up with these names?
They're great names. They're fantastic names. Yep. So he's the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe. And so Jubal, from him we get music, like musical, just music on a grand scale. And then Tubal-Cain is he's responsible for metallurgy. And none of these is bad, in and of itself. That's all great stuff. Especially metallurgy, with the creation of, the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron, tools to use stuff, tools to cultivate the land, tools to do things better. That's not bad. And music, what a beautiful thing. And animal husbandry, that's kind of what humanity is tasked with, is being responsible for animal flourishing, just like they are with human flourishing. And so there's good that's coming out of this city. But at the same time as the city is multiplying good, it's also multiplying evil. Because that guy Lamech, remember, Lamech had 2 wives. And God's design for humanity is 1 man, 1 woman. That's what marriage is about. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the 2 shall become 1 flesh. But Lamech is he's going off the rails. Instead of just taking 1 woman, he's taking 2 wives. And then to these 2 wives, he's singing this song. He's saying, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold. Good gosh, this dude is singing about the fact that he just killed a kid for wounding him. And so when we look at his poem, we have these things. So he killed a man for wounding him.
Who is this person talking?
This is Lamech. Yeah. Lamech. Yep. And the significance of his name, the Hebrew word for king is Melech. And so Lamech is he's a distorted king. It's a mixed up king.
He's lame.
He is lame. Yeah, okay. I killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. All right, so if we go on to Exodus 21, I'm just going to flip there real quick. So Exodus 21, verses 23 to 25, if I can flip there. Goodness. All right, so Exodus 21, verse 23. But if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. So if and remember, it's called the lex talionis, the law of retaliation. And it's actually it's like a good thing. It's putting a cap on retaliation, because this guy has no cap on retaliation, because he killed a man just for wounding him. He killed a dude just for striking him. And so in the law, we would have seen if somebody wounded you, then the worst you can do is wound them back. If somebody strikes you, the worst you can do is strike them back. But this guy, he's taking it to the max, and he's just straight up killing this dude, and he's singing about it. And then after that, he says, if Cain is avenged sevenfold, then I'm going to be avenged 77-fold. And so he's distorting God's kind of mercy toward Cain. So when Cain makes his mistake, and he's cast out, he's got this consequence. And he's really freaked out that someone's going to kill him. God said, no, Cain, if somebody kills you, then I will avenge you sevenfold. But Lamech is saying, if Cain is avenged sevenfold, I'm going to avenge myself 77-fold. I'm going to take it into my own hands to get my own vengeance. For Cain, God was going to avenge him, but for Lamech, he's taking it into his own hands. And we can see this 77-fold thing, because sevenfold is like complete. Like whatever the punishment is, I'm going to punish adequately in the same amount. But Lamech is saying, no, it's 77-fold. I'm going to go above and beyond to get my revenge. And that's exactly what he did to this young man. He went above and beyond just wounding or striking, and he went to straight up killing. And so he's misunderstanding God's mercy and grace toward Cain, and he's like taking it as almost a divine license. Like, yeah, I can take this into my own hands to get my own revenge. And it's nuts. And so within this city, we see massive amounts of growth, good things for humanity, animal husbandry, music, and metallurgy. That's good stuff. But at the same time, this city just explodes with violence. And so cities basically magnify what's going on with humans. It magnifies the good, but it also really magnifies the bad. And so we see that in Lamech, this singing warrior king who's just hell-bent on retaliation and revenge to an extreme level, above and beyond. And this verse is actually where what Jesus talks about, but he not with revenge, but with forgiveness. And so Peter comes up to him and says, hey, Jesus, if somebody sins against me, how many times should I forgive them? 7 times? And we're supposed to be like, whoa, 7 times. Dang, Peter, that's amazing. But Jesus says, oh, no, not 7 times, but 77 times. Above and beyond, basically limitless forgiveness. And those are the only 2 times that 7 and the 77 come that closely together. And so in this case, where Lamech is taking the 77 thing in terms of revenge, Jesus is taking the opposite in terms of forgiveness. Go above and beyond with forgiveness, which is amazing, I think. All right, so then we go back to Adam and his wife, back to Adam and Eve. And so we've kind of had this saga of Cain that began with his killing of his brother, his building of a city, and then this city just explodes with violence. And then we kind of go back to Adam and Eve. And it says, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. And so remember, her opening words were, I've made a man with Yahweh. I am the one who provided or created this life. But now she has a change of heart. And she says, no, it was never me. God has appointed me. God has given me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. And so the tragedy of Abel is that his name matches his life. So Abel is Hevel in Hebrew, and Hevel means vapor, because it's here one moment and gone the next, just like Abel is in the story. He's here 1 second, and he's gone the next. Okay, so now we have Cain and Seth. Cain and Seth. So these are now the two sons of Adam and Eve.
Did Adam and Eve ever find out if that Cain was the one that killed Abel?
Yeah, because she just said, so God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him.
Oh, so
So they would know. They would know. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awful. Yeah.
like, you suck.
Yeah, I would not be.
I'm gonna make another one.
I wouldn't be super happy. Well, that's the thing. So they know each other, and then God gives them another son. And so we're kind of like start back over. Okay, so then we have everybody's favorite genealogy, or sorry, spoiler alert. Before we get there, hang on. So they have this second son, a third son really, Seth, and it said to Seth was also born a son, and he called his name Enosh. And at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Okay, that's an important detail, because it's like later on we kind of see Seth's line as like the worshipers of Yahweh. It's like the godly line. And from the line of Seth is where we're going to get all of the good people, like Noah, and then Abraham, and then eventually Israel. And so Seth starts this new trajectory. Okay, and then we get everybody's favorite thing in the Bible, my favorite part and yours, a huge genealogy. And we're like, what the heck is the point of this? I don't really care. So genealogies were super important to the biblical authors, especially to just trace family lines. It just really mattered to them. But I think there is actually a narrative purpose to this genealogy, and we're gonna get there. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna go back to Cain, and we're gonna list out Cain's descendants, and then we're gonna go back to chapter 5 and list out Seth's descendants, and we're gonna see some pretty cool things. Okay, so Cain. Remember, we're gonna go back to chapter 4. So Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. Okay, and then Enoch was born Irad. And then Irad fathered Mehujael. There's some great boy names. And Mehujael fathered Methushael. And Methushael fathered Lamech. All right, and then Lamech had those, the two wives, and then the three sons, Jabal, Jubal, and Tubal Cain. All right, and then chapter 5 opens up this way. This is the book of the generations of Adam. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them, and he blessed them and named them humanity, or humankind, when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he fathered a son in his own likeness after his image and named him Seth. The days of Adam after he fathered Seth were 800 years old, and he had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Okay, so there's going to be each generation, and they're all going to kind of follow that pattern. It's like this dude fathered this dude, and then lived for this number of years, had other sons and daughters, and then died. So let's get the highlights. Let's get the names first. Okay, so Adam gave birth to, so he didn't give birth, his wife gave birth. He fathered Seth, and then Seth fathered Enosh.
It's so weird that their firstborn sons are almost the same.
Keep that. That's where we're going. That's where we're going.
That's
where we're going. Enosh then fathered Kenan. Kenan fathered Mahalalel. Mahalalel fathered Yared.
Oh, yeah.
Jared. Yared fathered Enoch. Enoch fathered Methuselah. I did not spell that right.
Yeah, I was about to
I
say.
did not spell that right. Methuselah. And then Methuselah fathered Lamech. Then Lamech, we have this little, this fun little like musical. It breaks out into a musical. It says, when Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noach, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief, or nacham, from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. And so Lamech gives birth to Noah. And then it says, Noah, after Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japhet. And we will learn about them in the next chapters. But for now, let's ponder these names, because as you just brought up, it was a great observation, there's a lot of similarities in these names. There's some repetitions, there's some really similar ones, like there's Enoch on both sides. Enoch and Enosh sound really sound the same. There's Irad and Yared. There's Mehuyael and Mahalalel. There's Methuselah and Methushael. There's Lamech on both sides. And so what we're supposed to, I think the narrative, there's obviously we just want to know who's related to who. That's really important. But why is this here? What purpose is this serving in the story right now? I think this is supposed to call us back to what God said was going to happen to the woman, or he told this to the woman back in chapter 3. He said this, not to the woman, he said this to the serpent. He said, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, or your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, but you shall strike his heel. And so when we go to chapter 4, it opens up with these two sons, Cain and Abel, who are both seeds of the woman, offsprings of the woman. They're humans. But Cain, through his decision to allow that animal of sin to overtake him by his choice, he aligns himself with the serpent and then basically joins the seed of the serpent. Because this isn't about humans versus baby snakes. That's not what this is about. This is about humans versus other humans who have decided to align themselves with the serpent. But what's interesting, and I think this is where the genealogy comes in, is that when you look at these two lines, you have Cain, who kind of represents the seed of the serpent. Then you have Seth, who's like the new seed of the woman. It's really difficult to tell those two lines apart because they're really similar on both sides. Because there's so much repetition. It's really difficult to just look at someone and just say, I know that you have aligned yourself with the serpent or that you're a seed of the woman. It's difficult for us to be able to tell, but it's their fruit. It's by their fruit you will recognize them. And John the Baptist and Jesus actually pick up on this, and they call the Pharisees, the religious ruling class in their day, they say, you brood of vipers. They're calling the Pharisees now little baby snakes. It's like you guys, through your choice, you're like you're oppressive. You've lost sight of what actually matters. You've actually aligned yourselves with the serpent, and you don't even know it. You're a brood of vipers. You're little baby snakes. And so I think chapter 5 is supposed to make us think like, oh, okay, I actually might not be able to tell just on face value who's the seed of the woman and who's the seed of the serpent. It's by your decisions, by your choice. Who are you deciding to align yourself with? And then it's the fruit. It was Cain's decision to kill his brother, to listen to the voice of the serpent, to listen to the voice of that crouching sin, and to allow it to kind of infect him and overtake it instead of ruling over it. That's what happens. The other thing that's in this genealogy is every single generation is very poignant. It just says, thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. All the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. All the days of Enosh were 905 years, and he died. All the days of Kenan were 910 years, and he died. All the days of Mahalalel were 895 years, and he died. All the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. Enoch, it says, he's the only one in this that doesn't die. It just says, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Huge rabbit hole there. But then we say, Methuselah, all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. And then Lamech died. And so we're supposed to see, as we distance ourselves from God's presence, as we continue to go down, this death thing is going to continue to kind of plague the story, to plague this family. Like it always ends in death. And that's not good. That's not God's intention. He wants life. He wants life. But this death thing keeps popping up. And so, as boring as genealogies are to us, and let's face it, they're not the most exciting thing to read. There is a purpose. And I think the purpose of this particular genealogy is to remind us that the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, they're very difficult to tell apart. And to also see that, okay, death is really an issue. Death is a problem. As we get further and further from God, generationally and just like whatever, death is just rampant. It's here. And so the genealogy ends with Noah. And usually we would think that, okay, it ends with, and Noah was 500 years old. Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then it would follow the next generation of, and then Shem fathered whatever. But we take this massive break. We kind of like break the genealogy and tell the story of Noah. And that's going to be the next chapters. And Noah, as his father said, he said, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us nacham from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. And remember, every new character that we meet, we're supposed to ask, is this the serpent crusher? Is this the serpent crusher from Genesis 3:15? Is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one? And so as we go into the story of Noah, we should be asking, is this going to be the serpent crusher? Is this finally going to be the human that we need? To be the human that we need. And so that is the story of Cain and Abel and Seth. And so we're going out of the garden. We now understand that cities have this connotation of positives, but also negatives. They magnify the good and the bad. And cities are these places of violence and that. So as we move forward, we're going to see that the violence that began in Cain's city just kind of like runs rampant. That's what we're going to see in Genesis chapter 6. And we're going to see kind of God's response to this. But we should be sort of seeing the clouds swirling, knowing, okay, something's happening. Something's got to happen. And so we see the clouds on the horizon. They're approaching. And we're going to see what God does about this situation. But we will get into that next time. guys, that's it for this week. I just want to thank you for listening in, and I just want to say a blessing over you. So may God bless you as you go to wherever you're going next, home, to work, whatever. I just pray that you would feel and experience God's presence. All right, thank you guys so much.